All right, good afternoon, everybody. Start the meeting. All right, let the record reflect that all elected board members, with the exception of Gigi Goldner, are present, and we do have our 2 student reps as well. Welcome back. All right, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Agenda. I know that Gigi had requested that we move the legislative advocacy to next study session. Chris, do you have any comments, any issues with doing that?
No, I have one thing about advocacy, but it's not related to Gigi's presentation, so when we get there, I'll just hit on that real quick, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. All right, then we also, no other changes
No, sir.
and executive session tonight,
Yes, sir.
about how long?
10 to 15 minutes, performance of a school employee.
Okay, 15 minutes.
Yes, sir.
again. All right, let's go into legislative advocacy.
Okay, I know we'll talk more in June about the broader advocacy, but I wanted to make sure that we at least discussed something that wouldn't have been on the radar last week, but is now, and that is that on Friday, we received notice from our insurance provider that instead of an 18% increase that they told us in February, we should be prepared for a 45% increase, which is over a $300,000 impact to the budget being developed right now. So as we discussed last fall, we're working on what options the district might have for us to investigate. Remember, we talked about our current provider has a 2-year, 2-month opt-out. So we are gonna be seeking permission to exit early and see if they'll grant that. We have a quote that's potential cost savings for the district, so we wanna be able to investigate that. But I do think that one of the things that wouldn't have been on last month's slideshow is the advocacy for school districts to have some relief from the Supreme Court and the legislature around tort claims and the openness of the length of time that people can file those is causing some of this rate increase for school districts. I know it came up at the town hall where the 3 representatives were at City Hall a couple Saturdays ago, and it's on their radar, but I think this has to immediately jump to the top of things that we're talking to people about that are filing for election, talking to our community about the impact that's going to put our premium over $1 million for our size district. That's something has to happen in that vein. That can't continue to be the year over year.
This is what, our 3rd or 4th year we've had a steady increase?
3rd for sure. So I just wanted to add that as something that we should have on top of mind, just cause it's recent information and talking to our community and things that obviously drives some things we have to do as we develop the budget, so.
Agreed.
Are we part of, are the school districts part of a group of like insurance?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Everyone's bad claims that are around us are driving those prices up?
yeah, and I think a lot of it is the change in the timelines around claims and how far back they can go. So the statute of limitations changed by legislative action. So if you have, potentially, if you have something happen to a student and nobody knows about it, they become older in life, they say, hey, this happened when I was in 1st grade. The potential clock can be turned back to that date and time on certain claims. And that, I will agree that if the district, or a district, doesn't have to be Sultan, knew about something and didn't respond by policy or procedure, that is one thing. But to simply not have some guardrails around it, if you didn't know anything and that contributed to lack of responsiveness, I think that should be considered in all these things. But yes, there's a pool of school districts that, I think there's 85 school districts in the pool right now, maybe, that pooled together over 40 years ago to use buying power to get insurance, the reinsurance is what's becoming expensive. It's just the litigation in Washington, the legislative action to open kind of a more free or more longer reaching has given pause, I think, to insurers, and that's caused rates to increase in addition to claims. I mean, when there's less access, then they have a more predictable market. When the window of time is broad, then they have to prepare for what that could look like. If that all made sense.
Mary Ann, do you have any questions?
No.
Lydia, Mel?
No.
Isaac, your question get answered?
Yep.
Michael?
Nope.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. All right, let's move on to bond rates.
Bond rates, so you will see, we're just gonna go through this, you've seen the first, I think, 6 slides of this before, so I'm gonna show it to you, and then we've got some costing that has come in from the architect that we've been working with, and then in a few minutes, we'll hear from Trevor Carlson from Piper Sandler. If you remember, you saw him, I think, a couple months ago, and he gave some, what ifs, and now that we have some dollar amounts, then he'll kind of talk about this is it, and then we can kind of get a feel from the board, and then we're gonna schedule a CFAC meeting between today's meeting and the next board meeting. So if the desire is to have a November election, we'll have a resolution prepped and ready for the May meeting, if that's the desire of the board and stuff. So, just go through a little bit that, and then Michael and Mary Ann both served on the CFAC and came to meetings, so they were the board's kind of representatives and sat through those meetings. So we talked about the need for some long-range planning, and then we talked about the new high school up on the basin, moving our preschool to second grades to Gold Bar. That was gonna, one, get our youngest students out of the floodplain, allow our same grade level teachers to have easier access to each other to work together. And also, as we've seen declining enrollment, we're getting into, just to remind everybody, this situation where being 3, 4, 5 students over at Gold Bar is dividing by 2 teachers is pushing those teachers into overload class sizes, where if all 7 of the grade levels teachers were together, the enrollment would have less impact in each teacher's classroom. And then that would lead to the 3rd through 5th grade configuration, turning the current high school into the middle school, and then turning the front part of SES into the parent partnership, district office technology, boardroom, and professional development space. And then the back, it would have a basic turfed area with a track for community use, which is, contributing to our youth sports and also to the people that want to walk around the track during the day, which right now we can't allow that to happen because of students being on campus. So, go ahead, one more. If you go, so this one is the projected cost of a new high school up on the basin is $122,775,000. So this is from the architect, so it has some breakouts about a bus loop and parking, landscaping, utilities, parking lot work, turf fields, so practice fields, not, we would play baseball and softball, those things up at the new high school soccer, but we would keep the Friday football down here, so we were not proposing to build another 2,000 person stadium complex. It would have 32 classrooms, including CTE spaces, 4 special education spaces, 2 gyms, a performing arts center, a cafeteria and commons, and then what they refer to as ancillary spaces or offices and different things like that. And it has a contingency and soft cost built in, brings that total to $122,775,000. When we look at Gold Bar Elementary, so this is adding 20 classrooms to that building. So it includes the demolition of the portables, the covered play area, and some demolition around the school to move the sheds and storage areas that aren't classrooms. Puts a bus loop in Gold Bar as well to take the buses around behind the campus, so there'd be an entry in the back where students would get off the bus in concept, get off the bus, come in, because the building would be off the 2 main hallways. So you would be extending those hallways backwards So you could bring them in there. It would also put a covered structure in that would be multifunctional for drop-off bus waiting and things like that. So separating bus drop-off and parent pickup in two different areas. And that cost of that is $26,026,125. If we go to the next slide, talks about the converting the high school to the middle school, and that has some demolition of the portables, some recommended demo that Charlie had on the site to get it prepped and ready, putting in a bus loop there as well, addressing some parking. It would have some covered structure for visitor bleachers, so not big, but we would put some structure on the other side of the stadium that could be for visitors. It would have a secured vestibule, so the one thing that school is missing is you come in and it goes the majority of that hallway to get into the office, so it would talk about converting that front conference room area into the conference, so you would wall that off in a secured way, so when people buzz into the school, they could only go into the office before they access the rest of the building. And then some mechanical and interior improvements. That project is costed out at $6,191,250. And then for SMS to be converted to serve grades 3 through 5, there's some demolition, including the backside of where transportation used to be, all those buildings that have kind of been, I believe, condemned, if I'm correct. It would take all of that down. Landscape, do some utility works, also work on a vestibule there. That one less costly because there is the offices right there. You just need to wall it off and direct traffic into the office. And that would come at a cost of $4,694,250.
Does that include adding some type of playground?
Yes, in the back area of where the football field is, yes. Age appropriate.
Yep.
For 3rd through 5th grade. Thank you for that question. And then the last one is the SES, converting it to serve parent partnership technology, the community walking track and field. So that takes out the portables that are there, takes out the portable that's at the district office. Puts in the field the walking pack, landscaping, parking lot, which we are part of when this summer when we have the project to deal with the parking at the district office. That's a gravel layer that's gonna base out to be some parking if the bond passes. So it's not just a short-term project, it's kind of getting it phased into there, cause if you have a community track, you're gonna need places for people to park. And then it would just have some building improvements to turn the spaces we have for the district office technology and the covered space, and that total of that is $7,207,875. So the total of all of those things, when we look at, just wanna make sure we know, what you see at the top is those 4 phased build projects at the cost we told you, and then what they did at the bottom was they did a cost escalation over the 3 phases of the bond, just to account for cost increases. So wanted to be clear about what they're pricing out the projects to be, and then that they've built in some escalation for a total cost of $174,582,330. We will be using state match funds through the SCAP program to offset that dollar amount, and looking for likely a bond in the area of $130 million, which you'll hear from Trevor shortly about kind of what's the impact of that on the taxpayers. I do think it's an opinion, this is a significant amount of work, but it's also not just school work, it's community-based work. It allows us to partner also with the city on some infrastructure they're looking to do, like potentially a water tower and some things up on the edges of our property that we develop, that which will help serve the basin. So I'm hopeful that people see this not just as new schools, but as a commitment and an investment in the community through community shared spaces. You know, the Performing Arts Center, gym spaces, turf spaces, those are not just for the students that we have, but also for our community and for families to have places to go, that they can throw the ball with their children and not, that one that would be on the SES site would be open on the weekends and things, so no conflict with school activities. It really is about putting a space out there for the community, so. And we started, this is our very, very rough kind of outlook on what construction could look like. We've gotta work with the bond financiers and make sure that when we sell the bonds, we have the money in the right time, but they would be working on the Gold Bar expansion and the new high school at the same time with work to start in the ed spec process, or we get in a committee of people together, say, what do we want in these spaces? In January of 27 if the bond passes in November. So really getting after it as a team, getting to work, going through those processes, and you could have students in the new high school and in the new phases of Gold Bar, cause you would still have students in as early as the fall of 29 to start school. If all timeline, everything cooperates, all the things, right, but and then they would start then phasing in the other projects. You can see there to talk about, okay, now that the high school students are out, they can go back and work at the middle school. When they do that work at the current high school, they would be doing the majority of it to get it ready for students in the 2030 year, knowing that they may come in the winter break, spring break, and do some of the things that are less impactful to learning, but knowing they would finalize that. And then the final piece of this bond would occupy, the district would occupy the district office and the parent partnership and things in the early part of the calendar year 2031. So just wanted to put that out there before Trevor came and see if anybody had any questions, or we wanted to maybe go back to a slide before he talks about the financing part of it.
So this is we've kind of talked before where, we think this is all the things we can do with this money, but sometimes costs change.
Right.
So this is kind of our priority order of what we plan to do as long as
Correct.
funding doesn't become.
Right. And it has escalations built in.
Oh,
So part of that is talking to people when you do ed specs and stuff is like, the dollar amount is this is what the architect has built into that based on their experience and their work with builders. If we decided to go put, I don't know, hologram doors on every classroom, right? That's gonna impact other decisions that you would make in the process, I think.
Or if there's another pandemic and the price of a 2x4 goes to.
bite your tongue.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think Dave would say, the same thing, you can get to the ed spec process, and I know years ago it was everybody was getting a projector. Now we would probably do screens, those become more cost effective,
Sure, yeah.
And we want committees to help with all that work. We need teachers, we need office personnel, we need community members. These are buildings for the community. I think what spoke largest out of the CFAC was that this needs to be, one, we need more longer range planning. We can't just look at right now and what we have to do, but also how are we serving the community? And expanding Gold Bar and putting a gym in there that the community can use, cause the layout of the conceptual design is to put it on the front left corner so that it could be accessed. If you're looking at the front, to put it on the left corner, so it could be accessed without getting into the other parts of the building on the weekends. People could use that. I definitely think as we talk about our youth sports, I think they had 70 students at the little basketball camp, having access to things like that, I think is gonna be important to our community. We are the hub of the community. If we provide something, if we have playgrounds, if we have structures, that's where families are gonna go to do those things. So I think that's gonna be one of our key messages is, yes, this is new school buildings and it's aimed to help students, but it's also a commitment to the community that we are a part and we want to have good partnerships with them and the city to have facilities in our community that are conducive to kids being kids and growing up in a community that shows a commitment to their future, not just academically, but in other ways as well.
Marianne?
I'm so freaking excited. You have no idea. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for showing up to the CFAC meetings and
Isaac, do you have any questions?
I love everything you're doing here. It's just, we can't fund things right now properly.
we didn't have a vision, now we have a vision.
How does vision fix the fact that we don't have enough money to staff properly?
Well, bond money and staffing money are two different buckets.
Well, I totally get
Capital
that,
fund,
but
general
we
fund.
having a whole nother school and a whole other thing, when I love this, I think it needs to happen. I think we're financially not working well right now, and I don't know how moving forward right now with this is going to fix that. I think we need to fix one part first.
We're making corrections actively
I know,
on that. I mean, I get what you're saying, like,
I love this, trust me, I want this to happen.
I get what you're saying, you're like, I'm broke and you're going and buying a new car.
Yes, thank
You
you,
know, I
that's
get
how I
that,
feel.
but unfortunately, it's like, I mean, you and me have one bank account,
Yep.
right? The school, it's like, this money is reserved, you can only buy this with this money.
Right,
It's almost like having a budget that's so strict, you don't even get to, pull out one pool to pay the other.
yep. I love this, and I'm very for having something, but it's just bad timing.
I mean, I don't disagree with you there, and then 130 million is a big number, it doesn't just roll off the tongue, does it?
No, it doesn't,
No.
But
this looks great,
But
it's just what I'm,
considering we haven't had a new building since what, the
Forever.
90s? And even at that, it was an add-on. I mean, you can only kick the can so far down.
it needs to happen, I get it.
Nothing's happened to Gold Bar other than portables since
Yeah.
it was built in 1994.
I mean, this is almost a responsibility to the next kids that are coming through.
That's what I'm saying, we haven't had a clear vision. I feel like we're finally getting a vision,
I
and
like
now
that.
we gotta start working on the puzzle pieces to make it come true.
I think also the efficiency gains that Chris was talking about, where we, with some of the teachers, we won't have potentially an overload or not overload. We can balance the classroom sizes a little bit more
Be able to
effectively.
staff more efficiently, yeah, that's a big point, I mean, and when you're talking about cost savings, I mean, what, 80% of our budget goes to salaries? That's saving a little bit of that 80% is a,
I mean, did a great job on this, it looks great.
What do you ladies think of this?
I think this is really good. I'm excited to see it move forward and how the community reacts to it.
would you be willing to fail a couple times to actually?
Stop.
Actually, no, I never.
No. No, let's encourage her to become a teacher and come teach at our
There
future
you
high
go.
school.
Teacher. I'll be a doctor.
Okay,
I'll help the kids.
Yes.
okay.
My question is, so, not really a question, to wanna clarify, so we're gonna be getting approximately $44 million from the government or the state in the or the, cause if the bond, it was 174
Right, with escalation.
with
Yeah.
escalation, but it's gonna be 130, and we're gonna get some money from the state to match the funds for I'm assuming it's Gold Bar in the high school,
Right,
those are
it
the
just
two.
depends on how much square footage they'll
they'll cover.
And we wanna be, when we met with the architect, Charlie and Mitch and Dr. Douglas and I met with them, we wanted to be really clear. We don't wanna use our SCAP money as part of the remodel for the middle school and high school, cause we wanna save those for that 2036 and 2046 bond
Okay.
for the long-range planning, because, so they knew that they had to keep that in an area that was gonna be doable without tapping into our resources that resets our timeline.
So we're only using Gold Bars then,
And the high school.
and the new high school.
Right. And so just trying to play the long game there too and make sure we're making good choices, not just now, but also setting the district up to be able to access those funds in the future. Should the state still have those funds, available but I think, in talking to the committee a ton, it's the three biggest talking points that probably came up were getting the young learners out of the floodplain as just a base safety. I think the other thing we heard largely is a high school will benefit all of our voters. So it's hard for somebody to say, like, my student that's in third grade would never see a new elementary, that they're going to look to the future to a new building. And then the third one was really making sure that it had community aspects to it, that we weren't building spaces that were gonna be restricted to 8 to 4, 174 days a year. for teaching, that we had a vision for how community could utilize the spaces that we're putting into this in a meaningful way.
Sure.
I mean, I think it would be, it could be easy to say, take the turf field and the walking track out and you cut a couple million. And, you can do those things. I just don't know. And I don't know that that's gonna be the most conducive to what we heard from our community. And I think, and we talked about after the levy, that Gold Bar had our lowest turnout for the levy. The sense I get is they have felt a little bit like anything that's been put out in front of them hasn't said this is for Gold Bar or Gold Bar is a part of this district. Not to say that anybody felt that way, cause I don't think that was the feeling. But I think by investing in an early learning area, one, that aligns some grade levels that are not state tested. So it allows them to really focus on early learning, getting kids to read, intervening at an early age. I know we've talked a lot about, despite the state's seeming lack of acknowledgement that the data is clear that early learning and transitional kinder and programs like that are the most impactful thing we've done across the state. It's us making decisions in a way, I think, that shows that that's where we believe we should be. And I hope, it's my hope, and I think it's the hope of our team, and I think it's the hope of the CFAC that the community would see that, knowing that it comes with a dollar amount. But I can likely assure you that not passing doesn't reduce the cost of a high school the next time around, or change the needs. When we see a high school graduating class with less than a quarter going to college, we need to be looking at our facilities that are CTE based, that are industry based, and what are we putting in front of our students from an employability and competitive market standpoint that facilities could really address. I think we got great teachers in all of our buildings, and having the ability to put them in a facility that has the same level of commitment. And for students, I mean, one of the big things, and I told you guys this when I interviewed both at the middle school and high school, is the students don't feel like the facilities reflect the pride they have. And I know we're trying to chip away at that. I mean, we did the gym floors, we're trying to do what we can within the capital projects dollars. But my hope is that community will hear from our students and staff loudly that, we know this is a significant ask, but it's a commitment to the future of our community, and that they would be responsive to that. And if not, it gives us data to go back and see where the gaps are and what we put out versus what people are looking for.
Alright. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you. And I hear you, Isaac,
I want this.
I hear you.
I get it, but it's just,
It's a lot.
it's bad, I just feel a bad time.
So with that being said, Trevor did walk in, so we're gonna switch over to his presentation and let him talk a little bit to you about more funding with more solid numbers, so. Thank you, Trevor.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to be double booked and giving me grace to tackle meeting number 1 and now meeting number 2. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. My name is Trevor Carlson. I work for Piper Sandler. I work with school districts all across the state, and our team works across the nation and helps municipalities finance projects. I have some updated figures for you today, and also one that's in my head because we ran a scenario when I was driving over.
When we were talking on the phone.
We were talking on the phone. I want to just kind of frame this in light of, it's a very dynamic environment. We've again received some information just as of this afternoon, this evening. So as those things happen, if there are adjustments, we can hit refresh on the model and get those to you as soon as possible, okay? Because that's what we're committed to do, is providing you the best information possible. The presentation, you have a hard copy, cool, yes?
Yes.
And there is a big piece of paper on 11 by 17, just in case, because I can't read things I print on the 11 or whatever, the 8.5 by 11. So this presentation is very similar to the one that I presented a few weeks ago when it was sort of snowing outside, and look at it today. What a difference.
That is right.
It was hail snow. So just so you have this, this was in the last presentation, election dates. So if you are targeting a November election this calendar year, That resolution filing date is August 4th. So June or July, the board would need to take action to get ready for that deadline. We can talk a little bit about interest rates. Interest rates have been very volatile. Just look at the tweets that are out there, the headline risk, the war is on, the war is off, oil up and down, stock market up and down, interest rates up and down. But a fairly significant and rapid move upwards in interest rates as of the first missiles that were this first salvo of missiles around late February, interest rates increased. We're still in line. If you look at that bottom right-hand chart, it shows the tax-exempt yield curve. Right now, we're in that kind of that bluish line. We're right in the middle of where we have been the last couple of years. We were pretty darn low going into February. That increase in rates just kind of brought us back to almost like a normalization, if you will. Okay, break out your reading glasses. The first option here is at 120 million. The second is at 130 million. And if my memory serves me correctly, may I peek on your sheet here? Yes, the large printed copy is the $130 million version. These two versions are 3 bond sale versions. Depending on how your construction cash flow ultimately turns out, that may be more concentrated. And that's the scenario that my folks ran for me when I was driving over this afternoon, was a 2 sale version. Having those dollars come in sooner is a benefit to the construction cash flow, but then you're putting more bonds and debt on the books sooner, so a higher tax rate. So everything I do, there's no right or wrong answer, it's just varying degrees of push and pull. Okay, so let me back up, let's look at this scenario that's up on the screen. Let me start at the top. Assumptions, your bond rating along with the school bond guarantee. The school bond guarantee is a credit enhancement tool that the state allows you to borrow their credit rating and they back the repayment of the bonds, so very high credit rating at AAA. I've taken today's interest rates, added a cushion of 1%. So just like your mortgage, you're not able to lock in the borrowing costs until you sell the bonds. And in this example, there's issue 1, 2, and 3. So there's interest rate risk associated with the timing till the election passes, you sell issue 1, interest rates move around, you lock in borrowing costs for 1, you wait, issue number 2 locks in, and in this case, in this example, issue 3. So there's interest rate risk embedded in these plans, so I want to make sure we have some contingency. I've used a assessed value growth rate of 3% on an annual basis going forward. That's right in line and probably very conservative, if you will, from what's happened within your district's boundaries. So a slight increase in assessed value. And then at the bottom of that top box, under issue 1, 2, and 3, are basically straight lined $120 million, putting $40 million into the bank right away, $40 million in the end of 28, and $40 million September of 29. Again, these are living, breathing documents, and after voter approval, we keep our finger on the pulse of construction cash flow, interest rates, assessed value, to make sure we're hitting refresh on these as we go through time. This is our, this is a guess right now. Below issue 1, 2, and 3 are estimated bond payments on a calendar year basis. Next column over, if you don't, I always love to kind of move around and point here. Sorry, folks, you might need to turn around. Kind of right in the middle here is capital levy. EP&O levy assumptions. That capital levy assumption is really important. What I've built into that is a collection amount that probably looks small to you. It's less than what the voters approved. I've targeted a 25-cent tax rate. Mitch, do you wanna describe why I did that?
So that 25 cents is for the technology levy piece of it. So we would keep the capital projects tech levy in, and then we would shift the basic work projects to the bond.
Does that make sense? Thank you, Mitch, sorry to put you on the spot.
I mean, I'm good.
He's good. EP&O levy, and then what does this mean from a tax rate perspective? Because we need to boil it down into tax rate so individual voters can understand tax rate times their home value equals the potential tax impact of voting yes. So to get to tax rates, we take all of those dollars that are kind of in the lower left-hand side of the chart, divide those by the assessed value to create tax rates. $3.78 is my best guess on what this could look like going forward for a $120 million authorization. So you could say, what does that mean? The next slide, page 4, God bless you, has an estimate of what this $120 million could mean to a homeowner with a home value at $550,000. You wanna step in, Mitch?
So remembering that assessed value is different than sale value. So that's the key. So, just recently when we had the levy, there was somebody who was posting, well, my house is $500,000. Well, what he paid for the house might have been $500,000,
It's
but
not
the
the
assessed
tax.
value is gonna be less than.
By law, assessors need to assess property to market levels, but again, it's a statistical model, it's not always spot on. But in general, your home value will trend up or down according to sales data and comparable data. If you don't mind, is it okay if I kind of go to this screen?
Go for it.
Thank you so much. So, a lot of numbers here. Right in the middle of the screen is $550,000 in 2026. Your tax rate today is $2.54. If I took this $550,000 house and I worked backwards based upon the district's assessed value and how that changed over time, way back in 2016, that house would have been worth $188,000. Okay? 188 plus 9 plus 10, 14, down to plus 6 plus 4 equals 550. Again, that trend. If I grow that home value at 3% forever, at $3.78, remember that was the magic number from the eye chart before, the total annual property taxes for what you all as a school district control, quote unquote, right? The capital levy, the operating levy, and the bond levy would equal this new tax rate and the new tax amount. And you can see the large increase with approval in 26 would hit the tax roll in calendar 27 and then be relatively stable going forward. There are no silly questions. That's why I'm here. Please ask them.
This annual property tax is what it would equal. It obviously turns blue after 27, so it's at 2141. That's just for the school stuff that's added. That doesn't include what's the other things that are part of the property tax.
You are 100% correct. That is a correct assumption. That does not include state school part 1 or 2, a fire EMS levy,
Right.
a county levy, a city levy.
Hospital district.
Correct. All of those others
Would that be added to it?
are added on top. I don't know what your total tax rate is, right, there's, depending
too
on
many
overlapping
things.
districts.
Oh,
It's less than $10, $10 is 1% of your assessed value, because it's $10 per thousand. Move the decimal place once, so it'll be less than 1%, but this is, as you can see, a relatively, I'll say judgment on superlatives, it's an increase, right, it plateaus out.
It is.
To a new level. Okay, so that's 120 million, 3 sales. Chris, do you wanna talk about what we talked about when I was driving over today?
Yeah, I mean, and when you were in the other room doing your thing, we had talked about 130 is probably where we'll end up
Yes.
hitting, which you're gonna get to.
Sure,
And-
yes.
And that is, with the construction timeline, previously, we had the third sale slated for September 1st of 2029. But if they 29, but if they believe they can have the building done by then, it might be worth, I asked Trevor, what's the impact of talking about moving that third bond sale up or doing it differently so we have enough cash on hand? Because state assistance doesn't come in till you're completed or nearly completed, and
Yes.
what does that look like? So
Yeah.
that's what we were talking about when he was driving.
Yeah, so again, we're getting data right on the fly, so we wanna update you as soon as possible. And I'll get to that answer in just a second, but thank you for setting the stage. So from a graphical representation, right, your tax rates in the past, what they've been in, way back in the 06, 07, 08, 09, the drop in 19 with McCleary and your operating levy, and then what that kind of plateau up could look like. 120 million, 3 bond sales with all the assumptions from 2 pages ago. Okay?
And Trevor, this also takes into account the non-voted debt that the district has on the books right now.
Yes, the 120 million would repay that non-voted debt, tackle the scope of work that has been outlined throughout time for you, and kind of does that swap, if you will, reduces the capital levy to 25 cents, because right now it's about, I think it's about $1, right? Hold on,
99.
I gotta go back.
Yeah, 99 cents.
99 cents. So think of that capacity is being utilized, right? You're dropping that, you're backfilling it with bond payments. So that's another reason, that is one way we're trying to keep the total tax burden as low as possible. And grabbing and tackling those capital projects with the bond proceeds. Kind of doing a swap, if you will. Right, just because you're approved to collect a dollar amount doesn't mean you have to collect that much, you can always collect lower. Hence why we're anticipating, or at least in this plan, depending on your thoughts and approval, reducing that capital levy amount to 25 cents. So 130 million is on page 6. Again, 3 bond sales, stretched out evenly over time,
And it's the bigger page.
and it's the bigger page, thank you so much. It's to $3.92. All the other factors are the same reduction in the capital project levy going forward, the same EP&O levy assumptions. Gets to $3.92. If we take this model and bring it to 2 bond sales, so we lop off issue 3 and just do 50-50 between now and 2028, this tax rate would go up about 10 cents. So the impact here is the incremental, the 392, and then prior, this had a 7 on it, right? I know that, I don't remember what the number is, you guys have it on your piece of paper in front of you.
It was 745, I think it was.
Yeah, okay. So 825.
Let's see. So doing it to 2 bonds would increase it to 402 about. Up from the
Yeah.
392?
Yeah, 402. Yeah, how about it done? Again, if you're selling more sooner, there's a little bit larger payment structure. Delaying brings everything else being equal, the ability to stretch those payments out for a little bit longer period of time. But then you're hanging out there for interest rate risk, right? If interest rates zoom up, you could be at a wash or worse off, right? It's always, the world's dynamic. But usually in a situation where, I shouldn't say usually, but many times, I'll go back to slide 6 and the big piece of paper that's in front of you. We'll model pretty conservatively, either a flat line like this or even kind of a normal curve, bell curve, where there's a small amount of spending on the front end, cause it's gonna be kind of soft cost planning. You start destroying things, buying materials, throwing hammers around, you spend a lot of money, and then it kind of trails off. But depending on, again, the dynamic construction environment really leads us to trying to create flexibility here so we can pivot if necessary. Sorry, I've hit you with a lot of finite, small numbers. I'll pause a second. The rest of the slides are duplicates of what we talked about last time. Your election history, the EP&O election history, the raw data that built the charts, the tax rate charts. Oh, sorry, these are new, slightly adjusted, because when I was here earlier in the year, my database wasn't complete for 26, so I had 25 comparable districts. So this looks at, I just grabbed Chelan since you do border across the hillside there, just to make the list a little bigger. Snohomish and Chelan County, showing from highest to lowest total tax rate. And then the next slide looks at districts that have assessed value that's similar to yours, around that $3.5 billion level, all across the state.
Bless you.
Especially.
Thanks.
So those are refreshed. We talked about approval rates last time. Remember, bonds are 60%. You need 40% validation. So the number of folks that turn out at the last general election. So if you decide to go November of 26, your watermark would be November of 25. The number of folks that voted times 40% need to come out and vote. It shouldn't be a problem. Usually is not a problem, especially with the general election. And debt capacity, wanna hit this also. Just as a reminder, the total debt capacity that you are bound by is 5% of the district's assessed value. So 3.5 billion times 5%, less any bonds that are on the books, so around that $167 million range. The non-voted debt, we looked at that last time. Those are prepayable at any time. So if you decide to go in November for an election and it's successful, we will build the bond sale around paying off these non-voted debt issuances and making sure that behind the scenes paperwork happens. And assessed value, right? Massive growth over the last couple years. Remember, I think I brought this up last time, we've used 3% assessed value in the model. If I go back 20 years, their compound annual growth rate is 6%. So we'll be, I think, pretty darn conservative unless there's some really big unforeseen things that happen. But even when those unforeseen things happen, like assessed values going down in 11, 12, and 13, we've come back up significantly. So I think we're being pretty darn conservative over the long haul. And the raw data we looked at last time. Your tax base was $1 billion back in '06. Now we're almost 3.5. And I think last time we looked at election data. November has become a little bit more popular for school bonds. As folks have, in certain areas, almost pinpoint that more yes voters, again, it's not everywhere, more yes voters in certain areas are coming out in November. So about half of any bond on the ballot's passed in February, 31% in April, 30% November. We've seen good passage rates the last couple of years. Yakima just passed, final election results were out on Friday night. So one of the two that were on the ballot passed, that's 50%, it's good. Usually long-term average is 40%. So there's hope, people are getting it done. Questions, comments? There's no rotten tomatoes.
We appreciate all the work you put into this.
I appreciate you guys a lot. No, it's good,
Lot
good
of
stuff
numbers.
to consider.
Mary Ann, you have any questions? Isaac,
No, that was great, thank you.
Michael,
A lot of information really presented well.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
on
you.
data overload.
Olivia, Bell, do you have any
If you
questions?
have questions later, for sure, we can touch base with
Perfect,
your
thank you.
CEO and we can have one-on-one, two-on-one conversations,
Thank
right?
you.
That's my commitment. I need you to be crystal clear on the opportunity set and be comfortable. I'm just an educator.
Alright. Thank you, Trevor.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you for coming out. Alright. With that, are there any other comments, questions before we adjourn?
No, we appreciate your consideration. We'll circle to the CFAC and expect to have a resolution in May unless we hear otherwise. Something to think about. We're available anytime if you have questions, if you digest it and wanna come sit down, we always encourage that. It's a big decision, not just for the board, but for the community, and we realize that. I appreciate all the people on the CFAC for showing up to meetings and giving input and asking for a long-range vision, so we knew going in what they were hoping to come out of it with. Cause when we don't know what they want, then it's hard to always know that you're giving them something that they can get behind, so I think that's, it's good to just appreciate, that's all volunteer work, nobody's, getting anything for showing up and trying to help put something together that's good for the community, so we wanna make sure we thank those people.
Alright. Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Alright, so, and we do have executive session for about 15 minutes. So before we adjourn, so once we adjourn, can we come back, say at 7 o'clock, give 5 minutes, come back from 7 to 7:15?
Sounds great.
Alright, motion to adjourn,
I'll motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, motion adjourned, or, went past, we're all out of here. Come back